So for the third and final time this weekend at Cadwell Park, we're about to go Mazda MX-5 SuperCup racing. We've had two fantastic races already and two different race winners as well. And they both now line up on the front row of the grid together for the finale. Liam Murphy and Alan Henderson on the front row of the grid. The grid set by the results from the second race, so Murphy, the race winner, has the pole position. Row 2 is Anthony Neald and Chris Dawkins, JJ Clements, John Greensmith on the third row, Paul Sheard and James Aspinall row 4. Then rounding out the top 10, James Blake Baldwin, Andrew Caird, Andy Coombs, Gary Townsend, Simon Goddard one to watch for from 13th, Jack Harding 14th, then Carl Garnett, Michael Lawson, Ray Worley, Ray Grimes, John Davies and Charlie Charman, again two to watch from the back. It's only a 20-car grid. We've lost 8 cars because of the issues that we had, in particular with that pile-up at the start of the race too. But still, most of the front-running challengers are there. The green flag waved to the back. And this should be a very, very tight race indeed. Alan Henderson dominated yesterday, but in race 2 he was beaten by Murphy. What will happen in race 3? It's time to find out. The lights go out. We're away in racing, and Alan Henderson makes a good jump from second on the grid. They will run literally wheel to wheel towards turn 1. Murphy on the inside, Henderson on the outside. Who gets the lead? Oh, they're still trying to sort it out side by side. Henderson hangs tough around the outside, gives him the inside line into the right-hander at Charlie's, and Liam Murphy in danger of getting hung out to dry look as Anthony Neald goes up the inside of him as well into second, and JJ Clements somehow finds room on the inside to go for third. He's getting a big shove from Chris Dawkins down the back straight, and that's John Greensmith behind with Paul Sheard. Paul Sheard making another guest drive in the championship this weekend in Jeff Gurrier's car, a car that he hasn't even tested before going racing this weekend, and he's getting stuck in now in the final race of the weekend. Murphy's already down to 4th place. He gets 2 wheels on the grass, but he does get back across in front of Chris Dawkins, so no more ground lost for the time being. But that is not the ideal start from pole position for the race 2 winner. On board with Paul Sheard, down through the gooseneck, the car twitching and sliding its way around a really, really tricky part of the circuit. They drop down in towards Mansfield. There's Liam Murphy, Chris Dawkins, John Greensmith, 3 blue cars getting themselves together. But it's Greensmith on the tail of that little trio of blue machines trying to make some progress. Henderson leads then, but he's got Anthony Neald, like we saw in the early stages of race 2, right on his tail going up towards the mountain. Floppy markers going for a Burton, and they really don't expect to last long through there. That's certainly part of the circuit. They've been using a lot of curb. Andrew Caird runs a bit too wide though on the exit of the mountain. Through goes Gary Townsend, and James Blake Baldwin tries to go with him, but you just can't run side by side through the Hall Bends. He finds that out to his own disadvantage. He then launches one back up the inside of Caird into the hairpin. We'll have to wait and see if that one worked out, but the leading group are heading out on the pit straight. There's James Aspinall getting very, very sideways. Big spin for James Aspinall in the back of the shot, and he climbs the banking on driver's right. That's a very odd place to go off. I've never seen a car go off there before, but James Aspinall had a very spectacular lose. He didn't hit anything, so he should be able to continue, but right at the back of the field. Riding on board with JJ Clements, who is desperate to take points out of Alan Henderson in this race, and he's pushing hard. Gets a big moment coming out of Charlie's. The car snaps sideways, and look at the momentum it's cost him. Liam Murphy's right on his tail. Clements has to defend up towards Park Corner. There is James Aspinall, who has recovered after that very spectacular moment. Clements holds on to 3rd place. The rear bumper's dangling a bit loose though, so he's had contact somewhere in the first lap and a half of this one. Murphy tagged onto his tail in 4th position, on board with Neald in 2nd. The mechanic for Paul Sheard, who is further back in this long train of leading cars. Henderson clobbers the markers. They all run a little bit wide onto the curb, but you can see that doesn't gain you anything. In fact, it loses you traction and loses you speed down the hill. JJ Clements is dropping ever further behind Alan Henderson in the championship now. He really needs to take some points out of Alan if he's going to be able to take the top fight to him in the championship over the final 3 meetings at Alton Park, Croft and Donington Park. And he needs to start that championship challenge now in the 3rd race at Cadwell Park. Through the Hall Bends, takes much more speed through there than Anthony Neald. Look, closes right in on the number 29 Paul Sheard racing car. But Neald has the inside line covered in towards the hairpin, before Barn Corner. Henderson flicks his way through out onto the pit straight. Got to get good drive out of there, because then the slipstream starts to take effect. You can see he's trying to pull out to the inside of the track, or the right-hand side of the track there, to stop Anthony Neald getting too much of a run on him in the slipstream. Liam Murphy sets the fastest lap, 42.492. Up through Coppice, in towards the right-hander. Charlie's the back of Henderson's car, really stepping out. That's something we don't see often from Alan. He usually keeps that car in as straight a line as possible, but he's having to hurl it around here at Cadwell Park. Still feeling under the weather, and perhaps that's explaining why he's not got the dominant pace today that he had in yesterday's race. Neild closing in, Henderson's going to have to defend, and Neild knew it. He went straight to the outside, no point even trying to get to the inside, but look, it leaves the door wide open for JJ Clements to perhaps come through on the inside. Neild's desperately late on the brakes. Can he get the car stopped? Well, he can, but Henderson's still holding the inside line. They trade a little bit of paint through Chris Curve, and Neild needs to try and get back across in front of JJ Clements. They're still side by side in towards the gooseneck. You can't run side by side through here. Something has to give. JJ Clements with the mother of all slides. He tries not to run into the back of Anthony Neild, and somehow they all survive, and somehow there's no change in position. It's brought Chris Dawkins into the battle now, so it's a 5-car leading trade, and Alan Henderson doing a splendid job there to fend off a very determined Anthony Neild. It's not often you see that outside move work at Park Corner. It can be done, but in one-make racing it's virtually impossible, so all credit for Anthony for trying it. But he knew he wasn't going to get to the inside of Henderson, so the outside was the only viable option. Back through the Hall bends they go. He's now having to go on the defensive, because this is a part of the circuit that JJ Clements seems to be fairly quick at. In towards the hairpin. There's Paul Sheard looking the red and blue car. We're right on board with number 18 machine now, out of the hairpin into Barden. He's getting ever closer to this group. So too is John Greensmith, so we could have 7 for the lead before too much longer. And we're only 5 and a bit minutes into the race, 14 minutes 40 left on the clock, and still the attacks keep coming for Alan Henderson to fend off. JJ Clements having to defend from Liam Murphy in towards Coppice Corner as well, so the pairing off for the time being. Henderson's car looks a little bit looser than we're used to seeing here, doesn't it? The tail end is sliding around a lot more than you'd expect from the championship leader. Out of Charlie's corner again, he dips a wheel out onto the curb, onto the grass, gives Anthony Neild a big run on him, and again he's going to go defensive early on. Neild goes to the outside, they almost touch as they go over the crest of the hill. Neild looks over to the right. Can he make this outside move stick this time? He's not under as much pressure from JJ Clements this time around, and yes, he's done it! Anthony Neild somehow goes around the outside of Alan Henderson. He had the dress rehearsal on the previous lap, and this time around it worked for him. Through he goes. Henderson down to second, third place JJ Clements, fourth is still Liam Murphy, remember, with Dawkins, Greensmith and Paul Sheard not far back, and JJ Clements dives to the inside of Alan Henderson, who runs wide out of the gooseneck. He loses 1 place, he loses 2 places, he's still on the grass. Chris Dawkins has gone through as well, and Johnny Greensmith, and Alan Henderson's still on the grass. He drops down behind Paul Sheard now as well. A rare mistake from the championship leader, and look what's going on now. Chris Dawkins goes to the outside of Liam Murphy in towards the mountain. He'll try and hang tough for the inside for the second apex, but Murphy was having none of it. Holds on to third place, and now Johnny Greensmith thinks I'll join in the fun too. Tries to look to the inside into the Hall bends. What fantastic racing this is, but I don't know what was going on with Alan Henderson then. He's made 1 mistake all year, and that was back at Rockingham, remember, in the wet in the first race when he slithered off from the race lead. Well, now he's made 2 because he just ran a little bit deep coming through the gooseneck, down the hill in towards Mansfield. He was still on the grass, and it took him oh so long to rejoin the track, and he's lost not only lots of places, he's down to 7th place, but he's lost touch with the leading group. So, drama aplenty then. Anthony Neild now takes over the race lead, looking for his 2nd win of the year after he won at Castle Combe a few weeks ago. Through Charlie's, this is on board with Clements, and well, now I take that back. That wasn't entirely a mistake, was it, for Alan Henderson? He had a bit of help there from JJ Clements, who then has a huge moment going down through Mansfield. So perhaps Alan Henderson not completely to blame there. He was eased off the road and then just couldn't find the traction to rejoin the black stuff. Simon Goddard and John Davies, 2 drivers involved in the red flag inducing shunt from race 2. John Davies was the trigger, really, wasn't he, when he was tagged into a spin by Simon Traves. The car looks very second hand, but it's still going quite quickly. He drives around the outside of Simon Goddard there at the Park Straight. See Charlie Charman not far back as well in the 42 machine, who's coming to the end of his first weekend of racing in the Super Cup. He's had a bit of an up and down weekend, has Charlie Charman. First race he was 14th, second race for Charman was of course a DNF, and now he's running just outside the top 10 in this one. There's Alan Henderson though, and he's trying to get himself back onto terms with this leading pack of cars, which is fragmented slightly for the time being, but JJ Clements, with all of this exuberant driving, is actually somehow managing to catch the race leader Anthony Neild. Back with John Davies, his next target is Jack Harding, who, remember, we've documented is really down on power this weekend. He seems to have had nothing but bad luck all year, Jack Harding, and it's a shame because he's underlined his pace and his car control and his racecraft skills all season long. He just can't catch a break. Again, running outside the top 10 here, he had a race-long scrap with Gary Townsend in race 1, and it's Gary who is chasing in this one. Look, in the yellow and purple 223 car, Gary Townsend series sponsor. And James Blake Baldwin, who missed the last round at Snetterton, is just in front as well the reigning Mark 1 Series champion, another driver who's really struggled to make the step up, and like Henderson and Clements, who seem to have found the pace straight away in the Mark 3 machinery, we've seen that James Blake Baldwin and indeed Charlie Charman this weekend have struggled somewhat. All four of the top 4 finishes in the Mark 1 Championship from last year are now racing in SuperCup, and that shows that the ladder of progression through Mazda MX-5 racing is really working well. It was a strange moment for Simon Goddard going through Charlie's up the park straight. Up in front, John Davies, not his brother Matt. John Davies has gone around the outside of Jack Harding. Matt Davies is here, I believe, this weekend, supporting his brother. Unable to race in the series this year, but Matt was a front runner last year in the championship. John, again, has had a bit of an up and down season, really, but this weekend has not gone according to plan. So he now chases after Gary Townsend. Jack Harding drops further back, perhaps into the clutches of a very wayward Simon Goddard. Not too sure what's going on with his car. Jack Harding's car gets more and more modified with each race, doesn't it? It's got some blue tank tape on the front now to match to join the black tank tape that was applied during race 2. Here is the battle for the race lead, though. JJ Clements has now caught Anthony Neild. We've just ticked over into the second half of the race, and Anthony Neild loses it, or almost loses it, going into the hairpin. What a moment it was, but he fights straight back up the inside of JJ Clements in towards Barn Corner, and somehow he retakes the race lead. Clements hung out to dry. Liam Murphy gets alongside him for second place. What on earth happened there? We've also got Chris Dawkins buying into it as well, but Neild leads the way. Murphy's going for second place, though, pulls out of the slipstream, goes to the outside in towards turn 1. Contact is made, and Anthony Neild spins. He spins in towards the first corner, off onto the grass. How on earth did he not collect the Armco barrier? That was a minor miracle that there wasn't more damage done. He's going to continue on his way, but I think he's flat-spotted those tyres beyond repair, and he may have to make his way into the pit lane. What a terrifying moment that was, though, for the race leader as he went down the straight. I think it was Liam Murphy that he tangled with, and the car went into a huge fishtail and missed the barrier by not very much distance at all. Well, that was a really, really scary moment then, but Neild survived relatively unscathed. There's Chris Dawkins. Now, he's dropped in behind Johnny Greensmith, Paul Sheard and Alan Henderson, so he lost out in all of that too. Neild is in behind James Blake Baldwin, so he's still going at the moment and keeping decent pace for the time being behind the reigning Mark 1 champion, so we'll wait and see. Maybe able to continue. Johnny Greensmith's off the track now, going down through Mansfield. You can tell it's the last race of the weekend, can't you? Because they're really starting to push the limits here at Cadwell Park. So now JJ Clements leads the way. Murphy is second place, and now there's a big gap back to everybody else fighting over the lower places. Up and over the mountain we go, though, so we've still got a tight fight for the lead, though. Murphy's not let Clements get away. Johnny Greensmith is now third, so he got his best result of 6th in the previous race. He's now looking for perhaps his first podium finish of the year. On board with JJ then, back into the race lead, and all of a sudden this race is starting to look an awful lot more promising for him, isn't it? He's looking set to perhaps take some points out of Alan Henderson. A race win now would go a long way towards putting him right back into contention for the championship fight. Across the line we go. There's Greensmith third. Paul Sheard is fourth, but for how much longer? Because Alan Henderson's going around the outside of him. He's getting a push from Chris Dawkins. They may both go through, in fact, in towards Coppice. They do. So 2 places lost there from Paul Sheard, and you could see there the effect of 2 cars working together. And that, I'm afraid, is another incident for Michael Lawson. He's gone off into the barriers that looks like halfway through the Hall Bends, and the car doesn't look too badly damaged, but unfortunately it's stranded in the middle of the road. That may require a safety car to get it cleared up. Bad news for Clements and Murphy, because they pulled out a very significant margin over this fight for third place, which is still being led by Johnny Greensmith, but for how much longer? Henderson goes to the outside of him, in towards Park Corner, he gets eased out onto the grass, and Dawkins, brilliant opportunistic driving. Chris Dawkins goes through into 4th. Every time Henderson tries to make a move in this race, something seems to go wrong, doesn't it? He ends up losing ground. Michael Lawson is clambering out of his car, so his day is done. It's been another eventful weekend for Michael, and unfortunately it's not ended in the best of ways, and that will almost certainly require a safety car. Now to get that move, Chris Dawkins launches up the inside of Johnny Greensmith. Did that one work? Came from a long way back in towards Mansfield, and no, it didn't. Johnny Greensmith held on, and in fact, Chris Dawkins is a little bit slow out to the corner, drops back into the clutches of Alan Henderson behind him. Clements leads the way. They're heading over the mountain towards the Hall Bends, to the scene of the crime. This is where Michael Lawson's car, remember, is stranded across the middle of the road. Oh, and there it is, right in front of us. Nowhere for the leaders to go, really. They have to take to the grass to avoid him. So good avoidance there from Clements and Murphy. The safety car boards now go out, so the drivers know that the race is about to be neutralised for the time being. Marshall's frantically waving the field down to slow down, heading in towards the danger zone. Double waved yellow flags means that there is something on the track. You need to slow down and be potentially prepared to come to a standstill. Luckily that's not necessarily the case here, but they certainly have to slow down to pick their way through the wreckage. Safety car picks up the race leader. JJ Clements, Liam Murphy. Johnny Greensmith is third position then, so who's going to come through in fourth? It is still going to be Chris Dawkins, then Alan Henderson, then Paul Sheard, John Davies, James Blake Baldwin, Gary Townsend. Then it's Simon Goddard and Jack Harden, and Charlie Charman and Andrew Caird next in line. And then James Aspinall. Of course, this works well for James Aspinall, doesn't it? He lost a lot of ground because of his spin at the end of the first lap. He now catches up to the tail of the pack. Be interesting to see how much more ground he can make. Recovery process well underway up at the Hall Bends. Safety car is leading them very slowly around so that we have as little time spent behind the safety car as possible. 5 minutes to go, so still a quarter of the race remains. We'd very much like to see a little bit more racing before this one finishes. I'm pretty sure we will get at least 1 or 2 laps before we get things finished. On board with Anthony Neal. So this is all the drama that kicked off a few laps ago. I don't know how he saved the car after that huge moment into the hairpin. But look, snaps straight back up the inside of JJ Clements. Great driving that from Anthony. He's now on the inside into Barn Corner. He gets the lead. Now what happens here? He's going to go to driver's left initially. Look, hooks the white line down the left-hand side of the track there. And now does he move right? Oh, he just starts moving over, and unfortunately he's not quite clear. Liam Murphy just had his nose alongside, and that was a lot of good car control, but a fair dose of good luck as well to avoid more contact. On board with JJ now, he had a good view of it. You can see there that Anthony just starts to move over, going towards turn 1 to try and take the normal racing line. Didn't necessarily realise that Murphy was slightly alongside. The two met in the middle, and there was certainly no malice there from Liam Murphy. It was just a racing incident, and it shows just how quickly you're going into that first corner. And as I've said already, Anthony Neal, a very, very lucky man to avoid having a more serious incident there. So Paul Sheard is now the top Paul Sheard racing car in this race, now that Anthony Neal has dropped further back. Car number 18, car normally raced by Jeff Gurrier, is now well up in the mix, in fact. There is the field heading down towards the left-hander at the bottom of the hill at Mansfield, and the lights have already gone out, so we're only going to have 1 lap of safety car. Great work, as ever, from the British Marshals. They've had a lot to deal with over the course of 2 busy days of racing here at Cadwell Park. And the volunteer marshals, as ever, have done a splendid job of keeping the action going throughout all of the incidents. So JJ Clements' next target is to nail the safety car restart here. He's going to have a lot of pressure from Liam Murphy, who's been fired up all weekend, got his first win of the year in race 2, and he'll be eager to try and find a way back through here, if he can, in the closing stages of race 3. Through the Hall Bend, safety car pulls away. JJ Clements is backing off, waiting before he decides to put his foot to the floor and accelerate for the safety car restart. When he goes, he can't slow down. He has to keep going, so it's a really difficult decision to make this, when to accelerate for the restart of the race. Looks like he's gone now, so they head down towards Barn Corner. JJ Clements has taken the restart. He's heading out onto the pit straight. Oh my goodness, they almost run into the back of the safety car, which is very slow leaving the circuit. And, well, that's a little bit questionable, because certainly the top 3, maybe even the top 4 cars all passed the safety car before it went into the pit lane. We'll wait to see what happens there, but we're back in racing, and JJ Clements is leading the way. Second place Liam Murphy, and third place John Greensmith is all over him going through the first corner. That was very close to the edge of the track there for Johnny Greensmith. He went very quickly through the first corner in his attempt to try and wrestle second place away from Liam Murphy. It might have backfired slightly though, because Chris Dawkins and Alan Henderson are right back with him. Look at that, Henderson gets up the inside of Dawkins, out of Charlie's, up towards Park Corner, and suddenly Henderson's back into 4th place. Has a real habit of doing this, even when things aren't looking great for him. He seems to be able to fight his way back through. Paul Sheard goes through as well. He's going to hang Chris Dawkins out wide, and John Davies goes through on the inside of him too. And James Blake Baldwin as well. What a disastrous half a lap that was for Chris Dawkins. 4 or 5 places lost. It's put him right out of contention. On board with JJ Clements though, he still leads the way down the hill towards Mansfield. Then it's Murphy, then it's Greensmith, and watch Alan Henderson in the white car. 4th place now. He'd love to get himself back on the podium and round out what has been a very, very solid weekend here at Cadwell Park. A win in yesterday's race, and then 2nd place earlier on today in the second race of the weekend. Bit of a lock-up there from Johnny Greensmith in third place. He's feeling the pressure from the championship leader behind him, hopping up and over the hill in towards the Hall Bends for the penultimate time. And what can Liam Murphy do about JJ Clements, whose car is looking more and more out of shape as the race goes on? Down towards the hairpin. Henderson looks up the inside of Johnny Greensmith. I wonder whether if for a moment he's going to try and pop one up the inside, but it wouldn't necessarily have been the safest thing to have done, knowing that he has this championship lead to try and manage. Fourth place finishes some very, very decent points indeed. Swerving from one side of the road to the other is JJ Clements, trying to break the toe. The last lap board goes out. One more lap of racing to go at Cadwell Park. Who is going to win it? It looks like it's either going to be JJ Clements or Liam Murphy, because they're pulling away now from Greensmith in third, who has attention from Alan Henderson and Paul Sheard to deal with. Out onto the Park straight, you hardly know where to look, do you? These two terrific battles, the two-car fight for the lead, the three-car fight for third place. Any one of the podium positions could change hand over the remaining two-thirds of a lap. Henderson looks poised to go for the third place, but look at Liam Murphy weaving from right to left, back to the left again, up towards Park Corner. JJ Clements has it defended beautifully, but again the tail slides out from under him as they turn towards Park Corner. Murphy peeks to the inside in towards Chris Curve through this long right-hander, and then you've got to try and pick your apex in towards the gooseneck. Ready? Here it comes. Bang, straight in, over the curb. Great driving this from JJ Clements, but the car is looking very loose underneath him indeed. Down towards Mansfield, they go into the braking zone. Anyone going to try and pop out and go up the inside line into the left-hander? No, they stay single file, and now they're starting to run out of options because the next sequence of track is very, very narrow indeed. You don't really want to go running side by side. Murphy's peeking to the inside of Clements, more to try and distract the race leader than anything else, I think, in towards the bottom of the mountain. Through the left, through the right, up and over the hill for the final time this weekend, and JJ Clements is just a few corners from home, looking for his third race win of the year. Liam Murphy, it's been a very solid weekend for him in second place. Look at Johnny Greensmith, Alan Henderson and Paul Sheard, though. That could all change hands as well on the run down towards the final turn. But it is JJ Clements who's going to take some valuable points out of Alan Henderson here provisionally, because that safety car restart did look a little bit dodgy, but he wins the race anyway. Liam Murphy second, Johnny Greensmith third, Henderson fourth, fifth is Paul Sheard, sixth James Blake Baldwin, seventh John Davies, eighth Gary Townsend, ninth in the end for Chris Dawkins, and Simon Goddard salvages a top 10 finish, and they cross the line quicker than you can say it. There goes Andrew Caird across at the back of the field. What a race, drama filled from start to finish. And in fact, at the back of the field you see James Aspinall and Ray Worley. They become a little bit detached from the rest of the field towards the end. Ray, as ever, is happy to get to the end of a race, and the driver's representative enjoys another successful and enjoyable weekend in the Mazda MX-5 SuperCup. But JJ Clements takes the race win. Liam Murphy is second, and Johnny Greensmith rounds out the podium places. That really was a cracking race, and the first triple header of the season has not disappointed. We've had so much drama, so much excitement, and this, though, is the safety car restart. Now, after much deliberation, it's been decided that not only JJ Clements, but every one of the top four cars in that shot passed the safety car before it went into the pit lane. Thus, they're all given a 10-second time penalty added onto their race time, so this is the amended result. Alan Henderson gets the win, Paul Sheard second, James Blake Baldwin is third, and John Davies is fourth, ahead of Townsend, Goddard, Harding, Charman. Clements ends up ninth with Murphy 10th, Greensmith 11th, then it's Garnett, Coombs, Caird, Dawkins is 15th after the penalty. Aspinall, Worley and Ray Grimes round out the field. Neald and Lawson, of course, were non-finishers. So, with the penalties applied, that also takes points out of their championship tally as well for those affected. So Henderson now has a 40-point lead over Clements, but Clements, Goddard and Murphy separated by just 3 points. That fight for second place is going to run and run throughout the remainder of the season.